Penguins by nature are evil creatures. Look at them. What are they hiding? People think they're cute and cuddly, like little waiters, but the only thing that they're bringing to the table is a bad attitude and death. And yes, I've never seen Mr. Popper's Penguins, but I assume from the cover that it's about Jim Carrey fighting against hundreds of these billed bastards as he tries to survive the night. Therefore, it's no surprise that when Oswald Cobblepot decided to put on his big boy baddie boots to beat the Bat, he took the moniker of this most malicious of megadipties, the Penguin. He's a bit of an oddity in Batman's rogues gallery. He's not athletically gifted, he often embarrasses himself, and weirdly enough, he's probably the most sane. He's had many a strange adventure in his time, and while you would never take him lightly, there have been plenty of moments that he and DC would rather you left out in the cold. With this in mind, I'm Jules, your Southwest Savage for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 things that DC wants you to forget about the Penguin. Number 10. He was originally called Mr. Boniface. The Penguin was first introduced as an art thief. He snuck into an art gallery that Bruce Wayne was attending and stole a painting by rolling it up and hiding it in his umbrella. He then took the painting to a local mob boss as proof that he was a criminal genius, and they let him join. Eventually, he fell out with the mob boss because he called him a bee-monocled bird, which is a terrible bit of wordplay, and I would know. So the Penguin responded by shooting him with an umbrella gun and then taking over his gang. He then insisted that his underlings refer to him as Mr. Boniface instead of the Penguin. Like most of Batman's enemies at the time, Penguin only went by his codename in later appearances, and so Mr. Boniface was left as his presumed real name for years, until it was changed to Oswald Cobblepot, which is clearly a much more sensible name. Number 9. He had to convince his aunt that he wasn't a criminal. Originally, Penguin was portrayed as a murderous criminal, happy to use his trick umbrellas to shoot or stab anyone in his way. However, by the time that he appeared in the 1946 Batman newspaper strip, he'd been turned into a bumbling thief, attempting to steal a letter for Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot, only to reveal that that was his actual name. The letter turned out to be from Oswald's aunt, who believed that he was a legitimate businessman in charge of an umbrella corporation. The Penguin then roped Batman and Robin into a wacky scheme to convince his aunt that he was actually a law-abiding citizen when she came to visit, which as a result made all three look incredibly silly. Number 8. He tried to kill all women and children in Gotham. While some enemies like the Joker might come up with, I don't know, a crazy scheme to gas the entire city of Gotham, Penguin prefers to focus on the business side of crimes. Yes, he may commit some pretty terrible acts, but Oswald's pretensions of sophistication means that he's always unwilling to step over the line and do anything too heinous. That is, except for the time that he came up with the crazy scheme of gassing the entire city of Gotham. During the storyline The Penguin Affair, Oswald got his hands on a deadly new toxin and threatened to release it. The kicker was that the toxin only worked on people without a large amount of testosterone in their body, meaning that it was literally designed to kill only women and children, which is pretty weird by itself, but when you realize that he was doing it just to extort money from the mayor, it makes the situation a whole lot stranger. Number 7. He went into stocks. In the graphic novel Penguin Triumphant, Cobblepot decided that crime was no longer lucrative and decided to do what, he was actually good at and make money through business stocks. Using a friend's company as a legitimate front, Penguin began manipulating the stock market to his advantage. Unfortunately, Penguin Triumphant is about as exciting a story as you'd expect from a book about Batman and the Penguin arguing over stock prices, in that it really wasn't. It's admirable that it attempted to move away from the traditional superhero tales, but the problem is that it didn't find anything interesting to replace them with, and a lot of the story's problems come down to basically that it was a rushed product to coincide with the release of Batman Returns. Number 6. He was inspired by a cigarette mascot. The central concept for the Penguin came from artist Bill Finger's observation that, to him, high society gentlemen in tuxedos looked like emperor penguins. What inspired this observation was a cigarette mascot. Cool Cigarettes was advertised at the time by a penguin in a top hat with a cane and a monocle and a cigarette hanging out of its mouth. Therefore, the design is an obvious inspiration for a lot of the Penguin's most iconic elements. The problem with this is that the Penguin is often looked down on by some as one of Batman's sillier villains, and knowing that he was inspired by a fancy penguin trying to sell you cigarettes doesn't exactly help to dispel that image. Number 5. He was Joker's sidekick. By the 1960s, both the Penguin and the Joker were considered to be Batman's main enemies, and so would often appear together. The comics would frequently feature the two of them either teaming up to commit a heist or trying to outdo one another to prove who was the better criminal. Despite both characters being popular though, the Joker was still Batman's arch enemy. That meant that the Penguin always got the short straw when it came to these team-ups, and so ended up just going along with the Joker's plans and acting as his sidekick, and the fact that he was happy to follow the schemes of an actual clown puts him in a bit of a bad light. Number 4, he fantasized about the birds of prey. And no, I'm not talking about having a wet dream about an eagle, we've all been there. I'm talking about the much more serious storyline of him actually having a weird dream about a superhero group called the Birds of Prey, who rescued him after he was nearly killed by new villain White Canary. This whole storyline was just basically one big bird pun. Taking the unconscious Oswald back to their base to recover, it later turned out that he was deceiving them, but not before he turned full pervert. Readers were treated to a dream sequence in which Penguin imagines the team as his own personal harem, fawning over him and serving his every whim. Later, after getting knocked unconscious again, he had another dream in which he became a Superman-like figure and rescued the superhero Dove. Number 3, he used to control birds. Back in the days of the Silver Age of comics, it was an unspoken rule that any villain built around a theme could only commit crimes related to it. It's why Two-Face only robbed Second National banks and why Catwoman had the perfectly job of only stealing cat statues. Things got a bit more awkward when it came to the Penguin though, as the writers decided to have him commit bird-related acts like stealing avian-related jewelry. He also got trained birds that he would also use as part of his heists or to fight the Batman. They even made it into the Penguin affair, where Oswald's plan involved using a machine to control every bird in the city and have them drop the toxin all over Gotham. The comic tried to justify it by explaining that Oswald had kept pet birds as a child and had majored in ornithology, but that doesn't change the fact that it was incredibly silly to see Batman punching the toss out of a few pigeons. Number 2, he's a judo master. As a gang lord, the Penguin tries to avoid getting his hands dirty, often delegating combat to his underlings. When he does have to fight for himself, he can rely on his trusty gun or sword umbrellas. After all, it's not like he can go against Batman hand to weird flipper claw, except apparently he can. In some stories, the Penguin has been portrayed as being a skilled fighter, having trained in judo, ninjutsu, and bare-knuckle boxing. Sometimes these skills are even enough to give Batman a run for his money, which creates a ludicrous image similar to that Yoda fight in Attack of the Clones, with Cobblepot spin-kicking and flipping around like a whirling dervish made of meat. And number 1, he had some ridiculous trick umbrellas. The Penguin's most famous gimmick is that he has such a large supply of umbrella weapons it probably makes Green Arrow torque his tights a little bit. But not all of his gadgets were winners. He had one that turned into a pogo stick, an umbrella that shot webs, and even one that transformed into a robot to do Penguin's crimes for him. Most of them, as you can tell, were the product of the 1960s, and just like a child at Christmas with a new toy, they probably were used once and then never seen again, which makes his biggest crime being extremely wasteful. Tut tut. And that's our list. Got any more Cobblepot capers which were less than cobble hot? Well, let us know about them in the comments section below, and I promise I'll never say that joke again. And why not swing by whatculture.com, where you can read more articles like this every single goddamn day. I've been Jules for What Culture. You can follow me here on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, and I'll speak to you soon. You're welcome.